I'm joined again by Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska. So, Senator, your new book is called The Vanishing American Adult. And in it, you say that you believe the United States is in the midst of an unprecedented coming-of-age crisis. What do you mean by that?
Too many of our kids are stuck in this category that I call perpetual adolescence. And this book is not about assigning blame. It's two-thirds constructive. It's one-third kind of stage setting. But if we were going to assign blame, it's about us, the parents and the grandparents, who are not doing enough to help our kids understand that scar tissue is something to be celebrated. Developing a work ethic, it often stinks and aches and is painful at the time you're going through it, but it makes you tougher. Scar tissue is the basis of future character. And we're not having those conversations with our kids, and that's kind of a unique thing in human history. One
of the things you talk about in your book is recent graduates moving home after college. What's wrong with that?
So there's nothing wrong with intentionally having a multi-generational household. I think there's a lot of great stuff about that. As a father of 3 little kids, I think back, if we'd had a mother-in-law or a mother and a father-in-law around at times when the kid number 2 came and were exhausted in the middle of the night, there's a lot to be celebrated about that intentionality. What's happening now, though, is not intentional. It's sort of passive drift back into the nest. The number 1 address for kids after they graduate college now is moving back into mom and dad's basement. Some of that is declining economic opportunity over the last 10 and 15 years. But most of it is more closely connected to the fact that we've raised our kids insulated from work. They've grown up sort of being protected from work instead of being taught that there's freedom to be found in finding meaning in work, not avoiding work. And right now, production and consumption are categories that most of them don't really experience when they're 12 and 14 and 16, the way most people in human history past would have.
But as you noted, economic conditions have played a role in that decision, because I know covering after the Great Recession, a number of folks who said we'd want to go out, and young people who had hoped to follow in the footsteps of their parents and grandparents and, you know, buy the house and get to a place of self-sufficiency, but the economic conditions simply didn't allow that.
Absolutely. That's a big part of the current moment we're at. But this story is more like the last 20 or 30 years and the next 50 to 100 years. Because what's happening now is a shortening in the duration of an average job in ways that's never happened before in human history. Hunter-gatherers and settled agrarian farmers, they didn't pick jobs. They just became 10 and 12 and 14 and did more of what grandma and grandpa had done. There was no job choice. At industrialization, there was job choice kind of in a mass way for the first time in human history, but you did it once. 15 or 20 years old, you go out and you take a job and you have it till death or retirement. Our kids today are going to have to pick a new job when they're 40 and 45 and 50 and 55, because their jobs are going to evaporate because of technology. They're going to have to be more resilient than the generations coming before them. And in a way, we're bubble wrapping them more at exactly the same time where we should want to be helping them toughen up in a way that prepares for the unprecedented opportunities, but also scary disruptions of the new economy.
Well, let's talk more about this perpetual adolescence that you speak of. You say kids don't know what an adult is anymore, that for older generations, it is, quote, our fault more than it is theirs that we ended up here. Is this a problem that schools need to fix, parents need to fix, or is this up to every individual?
So it's all of the above, though I think we expect more out of schools than schools can possibly deliver on. We put a huge burden on schools, and in a way, we need to understand that schooling is just one of many tools in life, and right now we've come to a place where we sort of drift, where our kids think that grade promotion through school is their main work, and then outside of the school day, it's a time for consumption. That's a little bit odd historically. Our kids, as you and I were talking during the break, are 15, 13, and 6. And last year, we like to work them. We think it's good for them. Right. And so last year we shipped off our then 14-year-old to a cattle ranch in the middle of Nebraska and had her help deliver baby cows for a month. And in Nebraska in March, when baby cows are being born, it's often 0 and below. It's tough. At midnight and 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., you got to be out there making sure they don't get frostbite and tag a baby. And a baby cow is between 50 and 120 pounds when born. And you need to hook it back up with mama if they get separated out in the field. And it stinks. It's miserable work.
Sounds like tough love, Senator.
It's tough love. And my daughter knew that it was suffering, and she also knew it was making her tougher. She didn't like that she got rubber gloves that went up to her shoulder. She didn't know she might lose a watch in there delivering a baby cow. And yet she was texting me all these things that basically were her screaming out, you know what, I think I'm growing up. I turned them into tweets because it was just great stuff. Hashtag from the ranch. And I'm tweeting out my daughter's coming of age work experience. And people all over the political spectrum from in Nebraska are calling me saying, how can my kids suffer too? What's that rancher's phone number? My kid's playing video games 7 hours a day. I want to ship them to the ranch. Everywhere I went in Nebraska for about 2 months after that, nobody wanted to talk politics. They wanted to talk parenting.
And what does she think about it now?
Oh, she looks back on it fondly. She's proud, right? I mean, in Nebraska, you can drive when you're 14, so she had already learned how to drive, but she didn't know how to drive a stick, and she got to learn to drive a pickup out there, and all these ranch dogs start hopping on her four-wheeler with her in the middle of the night, and she has real responsibility in the world. These cows who could be in duress during labor, they needed her. She was important. She was adding value in the world. Now when she eats a steak, there's a sort of special swelling of pride in her chest that she was part of bringing about that steak.
Yeah, there's a connection to where food comes from and the work involved in that. Well, so this book, bottom line, is not a traditional policy book.
No.
Why not?
Well, I mean, I think the most important things that unite us as a people are pre-governmental, right? There's so much stuff about America, the beating heart of the First Amendment, free speech, press, religion, assembly, protest, all that's way before partisan differences between Republicans and Democrats, and we don't celebrate that stuff enough. And so the book is 100% not about politics. It's 99% not about policy, but it's about a whole bunch of important American communal and civic stuff. But right now we're hollowing out local communities and mediating institutions, and our national conversations are increasingly about politics. And there's a big missing space in there about people around a dinner table wrestling with what do we want for our kids, and I wanted to help bring those conversations more into full view for a lot of parents and grandparents and neighbors who I think want to have it.
All right. Well, The Vanishing American Adult comes out on Tuesday. Senator Ben Sasse from Nebraska. Thanks so much, Senator. I hope you come back sometime.
Thanks for having me.